Call to order the City Council work session for City of East Grand Forks for Tuesday, November 28th. Would City Clerk please call roll?
Mayor Steve Gander.
Here.
Council President Mark Olson.
Here.
Council Vice President Tim Riefel.
Here.
Council Members Clarence Fetter.
Here.
Ben Pachivinsky.
Here.
Dale Helms. Brian Larson.
Here.
Karen Peterson.
Here.
Does turn quorum. Number 1, presentation about Polk County Family Resource Center. We have Victoria Ramirez here. If you want to go over everything, and you got some handouts for us. So.
Yes. Thank you for having me. I'm Victoria Ramirez, and I work with Polk County Social Services. I have been there 21 years, and the last 10 years in a leadership position, and most recently promoted to a social service manager. And part of my role was to roll out the family resource centers in Polk County. Scott County was the first county in the state of Minnesota to develop a family resource center in 2020. And as we were reviewing how to utilize our ARPA funding, our American Rescue Plan Act dollars, there was a lot of things that we were reviewing, including the community needs assessment that Polk County Public Health completed in 2020 that identified some very concerning areas of children and families' mental health and financial security. And there was a lack of social connections between families and children and the school district and the community at large. And so in working with Scott County and the the National Family Support Network, and this is the network that Minnesota belongs to now. We jumped on the opportunity to build family resource centers in Polk County. And so this cohort that we belong to now consists of like 14 counties. And Polk County, I'm pleased to announce that we were the second county in the state of Minnesota to develop family resource centers. We developed one in Crookston on June 1st and had our grand opening. And we've been running that 4 days a week out of the Crookston Public Library. And I think we've seen a huge success with attendance to our programming, our activities, and families coming in and accessing services. And then we just had our grand opening here at the East Grand Forks Senior High Center. We entered into a user agreement with the East Grand Forks School District to utilize that space for 1 year. And it's a very nice, gracious space. With this space, we were able to have 2 play areas for children. We have a parent lounge area. We have a classroom area for classroom parent curriculum. And we have 2 intake offices where we can gather information from parents and have more private conversations and understand what their needs are and be able to connect them to resources. And we have a little coffee nook or corner where parents can come in and maybe have like coffee and conversation and talk about maybe some things that they want to talk about and build those social connections between parents. So this flyer here from the National Family Support Network kind of gives you an overall general idea of what family resource centers are. And the main goals that we have is to connect parents to community partners and resources, services, and supports. And if there isn't a community partner or local resource, then we try to kind of brainstorm and work with the family on how to identify the barriers and kind of work through those and get them a positive outcome. And we also are trying to build curriculum in our Family Resource Center that will help promote like child development, educating families on child development, building social, emotional supports for children and families, and just engaging in a positive way with other parents, with children, and with the community at large. It's kind of the big picture. And here is our Family Resource Center East Grand Forks calendar for November. And you can see that our office hours are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 1 to 6. And in the orange, you'll see that we have community partners that come in and provide in-service hours. So currently in East Grand Forks, we have our income maintenance department coming in and helping provide like consultation to families if they're interested in applying for food support, cash support, emergency assistance. Our workers are there to answer any questions and help. We have our child support officers also coming in once a month to provide child support consultations. And then we have our peer recovery specialist with the Lotus Center that's coming in and providing support to families that are maybe recovering from chemical use or mental health and maybe need an extra support, somebody to kind of walk that path with them and kind of achieve their personal goals in sobriety. So these are the community partners we currently have. In Crookston, we also have public health coming in doing WIC consultations. We have, let's see, we have public health. We have Aluma that comes in and does an Aluma workshop with our youth, and our attendance there is usually from like 24 to 30 youth that come in to listen to Aluma's workshops and learning about coping skills, how to manage their mental health stressors, coming up with safety plans, and just kind of engaging with each other in conversation. And so we are hoping to continue to build the curriculum for the East Grand Forks FRC and listening to parents and families' voices and understanding what the needs are and continue just to build the curriculum and add more in-service providers, maybe classes if parents are interested in that, maybe activities or events if parents are interested in doing something. This Family Resource Center right now, Polk County Social Services, in partnership with Tri-Valley Opportunity Council, they're the community action partner. We have partnered up to develop these family resource centers and to expand them across Polk County. And so with that, we're also going to be developing a parent advisory council, which the work and the curriculum will be built based on what parents are saying that they need and where they could use additional support. So it's kind of it in a nutshell. And we do have the FRC brochure as well. And I just basically wanted to come to this meeting and let you folks here from East Grand Forks know what we're doing, have some awareness. If you ever run into any situation where you'd like to let families know that we're available to help support families. And we really just want to help strengthen families in Polk County.
Mayor.
I know the week before you guys had your grand opening, I spent an hour or so and you walked me through and got to meet some of your other team members over there. I like the idea of maybe bringing all these services together in one place, and I like the idea of it being an environment where it feels more like fun. If I needed some of those services, I might be reluctant to reach out to you all, but if it's a place where I'm just bringing my kids and we're having some fun together, and along the way, I don't know how I'm going to pay my utility bill this month, to be able to tap into some of that with you guys. I think it is a nice way for them to maybe access those services. Maybe folks who wouldn't otherwise get at it have access to it. So thanks for bringing it into our community, again, for a place for people to gather. And if there's anyone, I know part of what you're doing is, bless you, if there's anyone who might fit into that, another say agency that would fit into that to have availability to that population, to that group of people, I'm sure you'd welcome them, along certain parameters if they would fit in there.
Right. Yes, that's exactly what we're doing is, part of my role is to be reaching out to the community partners that are currently in this area and seeing how we can collaborate and open those channels of communication. We understand that families, particularly those that have a lot of stressors, navigating the different systems that we all have can be very difficult, and many families can fall through the cracks. So really the Family Resource Center we want to make it easier for families. We want to have that welcoming environment for them. We want to meet them where they are and support them with whatever needs that they have. And part of that is adding in different community partners. So the staff there are more knowledgeable about services, but also just building that provider relationship, in which in Crookston, we are already seeing that with our community partners. Like, they didn't realize that one provider did this, or that they had this program, or that you could do this. And they're just kind of sharing that knowledge and really streamlining services for families.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Anybody else have anything? Appreciate you coming in and going through this with us.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Thank you again. We'll move on to number 2, discussion on snow removal along west side of Bygland. Mr. King.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council. Just at the last work session back on November 14th, the City Council asked staff to reevaluate, go back and look at the initial decision that was made. So that's what we did. We went back and we came up with a bunch of different ideas and talking points and We looked at, ordinance changes, property assessments, contracted services, modifying plowing on the streets, utilization of other staff members, all kinds of different ideas were brought forward on how we could maybe make this a little bit easier for everybody. But it all ultimately went back to every decision that was made came with some unintended consequences. And so after spending time going through that, just kind of decided that it would, I guess the recommendation would be from staff would be either we go back and reassess, go back to the way it was done prior, or just maintain the current decision. And just as a reminder for everyone, to have the decision overturned, it would have to take one of the members who voted yes would have to reconsider that vote. The only real new information to bring forward for me today is we did just a cost analysis on how much we're spending, how much the city is spending to do the snow removal on both sides of Bygland Road and 13th, and then also along just the west side of Bygland Road, and then also got a contracted price to see what it would cost if we wanted to contract it out, and then we would maintain some of those. We would regain some of those hours which were the original intent, one of the intents of that decision. I guess with that, I will open it up to any questions or thoughts, or if anyone would like to move it forward or reconsider.
Anybody have anything right now? I think last time we talked, I'm the one who said to bring it back, so I was on that side to reconsider. So that's why it's back now. And also moving forward to next week, I think the only thing to do is bring it to next week's council meeting, and then we have a vote on it if we're to go forward and go back to the way it was or not do it. I guess those are two decisions that we need to make. And I think that, looking at this and looking at what the cost is, and then you got the cost of a contractor. I mean, the contractors, one was almost 15 grand, one was almost 18 grand. I mean, and we're looking at 5,800 just for the, and 2560, or is it total 5824?
Total of 5824.
12,000 for both sides.
Yep.
So I guess my wish would be move it on to next week for the vote and go from there.
Okay.
Anybody in the audience like to speak? Sure. Just state your name and your address again, please.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Christy Swanson, and I'm at 1034 Bygland Road Southeast. Mainly, I wrote down a few notes because I do get a little nervous up here. First of all, I want to thank you for at least considering, to take and change it from what you decided already. I really appreciate that you're taking that time. And then next of all, I guess I kind of want to ask Mr. Huttunen, did you not say that it wasn't originally a budget issue? It was more of a time issue?
Yeah, I believe I did at the meeting when we talked 2 weeks ago. I think the initial standpoint we viewed was a time savings, and that tied directly to Park and Rec staff ability to take care of their other responsibilities. It certainly does have a budget impact too. The time spent there, the wear and tear on equipment, and the fuel has a budget impact. But the initial thought process, go back to, we started this discussion internally with staff last February, when we weren't able to maintain our outdoor rinks properly. That was the initial discussion point, was staff time and where we're spending our time.
Okay, and then did you say that really wasn't an issue anymore? That you had no problems with having staff?
Staff time?
Yeah.
I guess I don't recall that I said that.
I thought you said that you had plenty of applicants and plenty, and I might be wrong, but I thought I heard you say that.
I may have touched on that we don't have the same staffing issues this year that we had a year ago. We had, last year we did not have a part-time employee hired to help out the one full-time parks maintenance person that does these duties. And this year we do have a part-time person hired to support that work.
And then the next thing I just wanted to point out is that all of us on Bygland Road, we're not trying to get out of work. We're not trying to get out of anything. What we're trying to do is keep what we had from the beginning. And that was that promise that was made to us. And no, there's no paper thing saying that we have been able to find yet, but we do have a promise, and I don't think all of us on Bygland Road can be wrong on that. I mean, we had that, and it was originally used, or they originally made us exempt so they could move on with the sidewalk project. And if they, if they made it exempt then, why can't they make it or keep it that way? And if it's not a major problem, if it worked for the last decade longer, why can't it continue to work? I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. I mean, we've done it this long. And even though we don't have it on paper, like I said, we all believed in that promise. I mean, we were told that, and that's what we believed, and that's what we went by. And then after the sidewalks, or when the sidewalks are put in, then we have the problem with them only being 5 feet away. And I'm sure when they did that, they did it because of the tree line, and they weren't going to have the extra cost of pulling out trees and doing all that, which either way probably wasn't for our benefit, or either way. And most sidewalks, with the exemption of probably a few, are at least 12 to 20 feet away. Even the other end of Bygland Road, from 6th Avenue north. I mean, just right at 6th Avenue, they're 14 feet away. Or maybe that's 6th Street, sorry. And there's, a lot of other places where they're 20 feet away, and that excess is just too much for us to have to clean up from the snowplows. And I don't think going 5 feet away is the answer, because then you're not going to have safe travel on Bygland Road. I mean, I wished it could be the answer, but... And I guess that's pretty much all I've got to say, but the fact that we were promised, and that's what we all believed in, and I'm hoping you'll continue to keep and honor that promise, whether we have a paper trail or in writing or otherwise. I mean, it's kind of disheartening to know that, we believed it this long, and then all of a sudden they're trying to take it away. And that's the way it was from the beginning. We were exempt from the beginning. Why change it now? Especially if it's not, super direct impact. I'm sure long over the way it has been, but I mean, it wasn't brought up before. I don't know if there's why, or...
I think one of the issues that got brought up was staffing, because I think everybody's felt that in the last few years that getting somebody to come work has been difficult. I think that's why in the past you didn't see it. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the last few years, we started seeing more or less people applying for jobs. And we're not exempt from that at all, the city.
Right.
So, but I think that's what he was referring to last year when we didn't have somebody, and that's it's how it's been. And so it's something that we've had to work through on in every department of this city to make sure that we have stuff covered. So, I mean, it's nothing that we plan. Well, we're not going to hire these people, we're not going to hire these people. It's just we're trying to get people, and that's what we're running into.
Understandable. It's there all over, so.
I'm Jennifer Bushy, 1214 Bygland. I was just going to comment on that. I had talked to Jeremy today because I had a couple of questions about, I saw the city cleaning the sidewalks yesterday, and they were over on the east side cleaning, and I was following him, watching what he was doing, and I was kind of questioning some of the stuff that he was doing. So I called Jeremy in the morning, and I'm like, this is what I saw him doing, is this right? And I saw him cleaning my part of the west side of Bygland, like where the townhomes were, and he was like, no, he was new. He shouldn't have been doing that. So I was like, did you change your mind? So talking about it, I'm like, so you must have obviously hired, you said he was new, you must have hired more people. So if you're talking about people, yeah. It was like, and he's doing that, I'm like, is this really, like, he was just practicing, and then I was like, okay.
He's learning how to use
But
the
he was
sweeper
learning.
now.
I was like, he's doing what you said he's not doing. So, yeah, but I was like commenting about that he, obviously that you must have hired or must be hiring people, so.
Yep.
Not yet, yeah, we're still in good shape.
It's not much snow either.
No.
Yeah, and I was laughing because I was like, we were good, I was really not a whole lot of
Yeah,
snow. He was whooping around and I'm like, oh.
It's a little
all right.
on-the-job
So
training.
he's got
yeah.
time, he's got
Yeah.
whatever. I'm like, all right,
Yeah,
whatever.
so,
But commenting about that. But yeah,
Yeah.
good points. I agree with everything that Christy said. I remember when they were brought up, the sidewalks and where they had to put them in 2012, that because of our tree line, they had to be closer to the road. I do remember that. And so yeah, I do agree with Christy.
Oh dear. I just have a question. Deb
Go on,
Hearn,
Liz.
1120 Bygland Road. I have kind of a budget thing here. That's okay. These dates on here, are they for every time they have cleaned the sidewalks?
These are,
Estimates, tell me?
all those dates last year were snow events. And me not being in the department and not having great records, those are within a day or two of when the city was out there. So, and those are probably, we had record of all the times that we had plowed snow on the streets last year. And so I used those dates to come up with this estimate of how many times we were out there.
On the sidewalk?
On the sidewalk, correct.
Well, they're not on the sidewalk every day. I mean, every other day either.
Right.
No.
Okay. So you're just estimating
And
that.
and I would say that I estimated on the smaller side. We plowed snow, sorry, I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I think 22 times or 24 times last year. We called out the plow operators early, and this is about 16 times. So this didn't include there weren't any weekends on this. These were all weekdays, and these are a rough estimate of when we would have been out there.
On the sidewalks?
On the
downtown.
sidewalks, not the streets, correct.
An estimate that you were,
Yep.
because it seems like they're there every other day or every 3 days. I don't see them there that often, because I walk that sidewalk every day to let my dog out. And if they're going to be there that often, to me, the sidewalks should be really clean, and they're not clean. And I know where you can't get down to concrete, but they should be better than they are. That's all.
Yeah, no,
I
I'm
mean-
fairly confident those are some pretty strong numbers.
And I think my snowblower probably could do better. If I'm doing my driveway, I know I can do the sidewalk too, but, okay, that's all I wanted to know. You're just estimating it.
okay. Anybody else have anything? If not, we'll move it on to Karla.
Jeremy, the plows don't go out unless there's 4 inches, right?
2 inches is the calling trigger, but it all, it's all dependent on how the snow falls. There could be, you don't want to call the plows too early because then you're just wasting resources. So you've got to make sure, you try to let the event finish is the idea. And if you remember last year, we had like back-to-back, a couple different scenarios where we had back-to-back events. There was 1 week, I think it was right before Christmas where we were, it was just crazy. We were plowing constantly. But, so yeah, we try to let the event finish and then go out and plow it after, but,
And that's what this is, isn't it, Jeremy? These are the snow events from last year.
yeah.
So this is when it snowed last year. So I think it's inarguable that's when they were out there on the sidewalks last year. So I wouldn't call this an estimate.
Well, I don't see them being there that often. Like, I'm just looking at some dates here. They don't come they're not there every day, for sure.
No, that's not what this is.
Right.
This is when it snowed last
When
year.
it's, just when it's snowing.
Yeah, this is like the meteorological data of when it snowed last year. Last year was a bad winter.
Yeah.
This year,
yes.
I hope it's much less than this. But
So
that's
what are they
this is.
doing now with their time? They don't have to snow blow.
At the rinks.
I really don't know what Parks and Rec does besides the snow blowing and stuff and
Well,
mowing in the summer.
We just hired that person yesterday, and that's what we're using this time to get him acquainted with the equipment. So we try to hire, we don't want to hire someone. Initially, our plan was to hire him a couple weeks ago, but with no snow on the ground, we tried to push that date off and again save some costs there and some time. But now it's getting to the point where we've got to make sure he's trained so that it could snow at any day now.
Okay.
Are you Nancy?
I am Nancy.
Okay, hi, I'm Jennifer Bushy. I was just curious, dumb question, like your name, like on our letters, like that we got back in 2012, like your name's on it, like were you not part of like those sidewalks or weren't
Yes, I was.
in those talks where the city was talking about?
I
doing
led the
snow
meetings.
removal? Yeah, and you weren't aware of any, like the people say that we know we were promised, like you don't have any.
I made no
memory of it?
promises, and I had
No, I'm not saying
council
you.
members at the
I'm not
meetings,
saying-
so I don't know who told you that, but I'm not saying that you didn't get
No.
promised, I just know it wasn't at any meeting I attended, so.
As an example, in my ward, we had some councilmen way back 25 years ago tell people they were going to redo 20th. He can say whatever the heck he wants to say, but he's got to come bring it before the council with a resolution, a vote, a second, and then discussion, and then the final vote.
Mayor has to sign it.
And the mayor has to sign it. Otherwise, it don't mean squat. And I've been fighting that for how many years now? 8. And I finally had to tell them, careful what you wish for. If we don't do it now, it's going to be double in about 8 years when we have to do it. And they understand that. I made it quite clear.
All right.
That's the council says they're going to do it.
All right, does anybody else have anything? If not, we'll move it on till next week and
Thanks for coming.
next.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
guys.
Thanks for coming in. Okay, we'll move on to number 3, consider excess liability coverage. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this is just our yearly, we're renewing our insurance with the League of Minnesota Cities, and part of that renewal is to consider excess liability coverage that we get through the league. And so we have to have a vote by the council and a resolution signed that we send to the league on which liability option we want to pick. So there's 3 options. I know Ron might have to, if there's any questions, Ron's going to answer about the liability, but in years past, last year they picked option 1, and all the years that I've been here, it's been option 2. If there was a choice, if you choose option 3, which would actually increase the limits, those costs are listed for what excess liability limit you'd want. So if you wanted an additional $1 million, the approximate premium would be $43,478, and none of these additional premiums, are in the 2024 budget. So it's just a matter of, number 1, and there's a limit for $500,000 for the claim, for each claimant, and in number 2, that a single claimant could receive up to $2 million for a single occurrence. So any questions on that?
I'm assuming we're going option 1, since $43,000 isn't in the budget for the $1 million, and if 62 is not in the budget for $2 million. I mean,
There is no cost for number 2, though. Number 1 or number 2 do not cost anything. It's only number 3 for excess liability. The difference between 1 and 2 is the
right,
limit
just
that a
saying, so we're
claimant
not-
can get, but there's no cost for 1 or 2.
I'm just saying, so the costs aren't in the budget, so why would we go to add that additional cost to the budget when we don't need to?
Correct, so number 3 is out.
And reasoning why we went to number 1 last year? Was there any look back at the discussion or why we did it? Was there some reasoning?
I don't remember, I don't have any idea, because it was the first year that we always actually did different than any other year.
What was your recommendation as a finance administrator?
Well, Actually, I would ask Ron for his recommendation as the city attorney. We've never had a claim, but I guess the discussion would be if there was a claim, a substantial claim against the city on any event, that the person filing the claim would be, it would only be up to $500,000. So if there was some kind of occurrence that was $1 million, the claimant would only get $500,000. Correct, Ron?
Yes, well, yes, if there was some type of an accident that was covered under number 1 for that individual, if they had as Karla just indicated, if they had $1 million loss because of the cap, they would get $500,000. Under the second, but there would be $1.5 million for that occurrence. So if there was more than one person that got injured, they'd each be able to get up to that $1.5 million, but not over for themselves that $500,000. The next one, it caps it off at $2 million per occurrence. So if there was one person that got hurt, they could get up to $2 million for that injury or occurrence. The difference that I see is maybe it might not cost you anything and you to have that $2 million. The issue is whether if you did the payout, instead of $500,000, you paid out $2 million because that's the coverage that you had. There's always premiums that are affected by your payment plans and by the usage. So the issue would become the cost going forward on premiums for that same coverage. And then
Looking for his loss ratio.
there you have it. And so then on the third one, which nobody's going to be talking about right now, is that for each million over that 2 million or each million over that would be another cost to extend that coverage. Anything else?
There's some thought that there's just a pattern out there of trying to go to that cap regardless of, just go ahead and just name it to that cap and just see what you can get. Is there some thought that that's sometimes what happens?
I would say that in any civil lawsuit, typically what you do is you say $50,000 or more, so to speak, and then the damages are at least $50,000 or more. The cap is the $500,000 under the covered ones. I guess I can't say that, but obviously if you're going to sue somebody, you're going to want to get the most money for your buck, right? So.
Thanks, Ron.
But they do have to prove the loss.
Well,
yes.
obviously, it would be.
I can check with the league to see if they've had this happen and if there's a certain percentage that the rate went up or something afterwards. I can check with our league representative on that.
And
See if
I
they've
do
had any
recall
other
that.
examples on that.
I do recall that conversation last year as we checked with the league, and they basically came back and said, some cities go with the cap at 500,000, some cities go with the 2 million, very few get excess. I do remember that conversation, I just don't remember the percentages. I guess we can, if anybody else has any input on it, we can bring it to next meeting and someone can make a motion if they want to do it.
Thank you.
Does staff plan to make a recommendation on this, just to get, kind of a consensus?
Well, like I said, I will check with the league and ask again if they know, and if they have had losses, what kind of increase in the premium in the next year. So that might be the difference. If you want to cap it at 500, what would the increase in the premium be? Just like you said, the loss ratio. And what would you have if it was a 2 million? And we'll see if they can give us any kind of answer on that.
So would someone be willing to pull the minutes from last year and retrieve the conversation we had and the rationale for how it tipped in that direction? Please. Thank you.
Alrighty. Ben, yes, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I guess right now we're saying if someone has a $2 million loss and our limit is 500,000, they can only get 500,000, right? And do they have any recourse to get that other 1.5 million? Or are they, because we're a city and our insurance only covers up to 500,000, is it pretty much like we're a city, this is what our insurance covers?
That's what the statute for tort limitations are, so you're right on that. If there was a $2 million loss, they would be able to collect from the city 500,000.
So we're pretty much just trying to find a policy that does right by whoever's having the loss the best, and then trying to evaluate whether or not we want to take the risk of allowing someone to have a $2 million loss and us paying it out, and then the next year our premiums are likely going to go way up.
That's exactly it. Yes,
Right.
thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, I think my thought would be is we go with option one, but it's just me. Not a financial analyst, though. So thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, we'll move it on to next week and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
All right, number 4, request for American Crystal Sugar. Mr. Huttunen.
Thank you, Mr. President, council members. A couple weeks ago, we had a visit from American Crystal Sugar. They're bringing forward, or would like to bring forward, a bill to the legislature this year to request a special permit to transport sugar beets with their trans system trucks in a redesigned truck trailer concept that has twin trailers. Right now, they're currently just hauling single trailer loads into Minnesota. The proposed truck trailer that they have is 122,000 pounds in comparison to the 80,000 pound limit that Minnesota currently has on the roads. And these would all be, in their truck traffic, would be from piling stations located in North Dakota that they would use the interstate and then come across on Business Highway 2, specifically onto 5th Avenue Northeast, and then trunk business to get into their plant. It's on the bill is proposed on a trial basis, so they would have a few limited number of truck trailers built and able to operate within that specific route. It would be only the 5th Avenue to Trunk Business 2 route in this trial period, and as an effort to gather additional data and see if it's something that they think could pass the test for their processes and operations, as well as the state of Minnesota, with the potential that once the trial basis expires in future years, they could expand the operation of these truck trailer tandems to other sites across Minnesota, all in the effort of reducing the number of truck trips that come into the plant. So they have asked the city of East Grand Forks to sign on just with a resolution of support for this bill to be able to enact, again, the special permit at the state level on a trial basis for the next couple of years.
Mr. Mayor.
Some of the questions we had when we met with them were, and they provided some of this information, and I think you might see it in your packet, less tons per axle in this scenario versus their standard truck, better braking, so their braking distances are shorter with this double, cleaner turn radius. They would more likely cut across a corner, endangering, let's say, anyone along that arc of their curve with the original truck trailer. This updated one with the double is actually a better turn radius. And as Reid said, fewer trips, which will lead to some cost savings. And so in every way, we really tried to push them a little bit and say, is there any sort of downside? Is there any sort of exposure or concern that we should have for other motorists, other pedestrians, even though this is not a heavy pedestrian area? And for me, and I hope for the rest of us, they put my concerns to bed as for the safety of what they're proposing here.
Anybody else have anything?
Question.
Ben, yes, sir.
Thank you. Is there a video that we can watch of seeing these turn? Because in my mind, like visually, I see these actually like cutting a corner more versus like, having the turn. And then who's driving these? Is this Trans Systems Or is this Farmer Joe hiring someone to come and drive his truck?
It's Trans Systems.
Yeah, so if it's Trans Systems doing it, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with that, but, I want a
Did
professional
everybody get
driving.
that diagram they
No,
sent?
yeah, so they did, American Crystal did share a diagram, we got it this morning, that showed the turning radius in comparison to the current single trailer. We can send that out to everybody. That's just a diagram, it's not a video, Ben.
Yeah, that's,
Well, we'll share that, and Mr. Olsted touched on it too, it's specific to Trans Systems, to their professional trained drivers.
I just don't want to see something like happened in Crookston a couple years ago.
I think
Exactly what I said.
Yeah, I think specific to the discussion we had in this trial basis, they would plan on employing 4 of these at the time. They have 3 that are currently in operation in North Dakota that are legal in North Dakota to operate, and I think their goal would be to have 4 in this trial period, 4 total truck trailer combos.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Mr. Bitter?
Thank you. I would be in support of this resolution mainly because East Grand Forks about 25, 30 years ago lost a major grocery wholesaler, mainly because the state of Minnesota would not allow double trailers to come down Business Highway 2 and 4th Street. And no one thinks that a major company would pick up and move across state lines, but that's exactly what happened, and hopefully Crystal wouldn't move either if this wouldn't go through, but I'd be in support of the resolution.
Anybody else have anything? I think we'll move it on. Wonderful. So, number 5, requested direction of Police Department recruitment and retention bonus. Mr. Huttunen.
Thanks again, Mr. President. We had this discussion a couple of weeks ago. In that discussion, it was requested that we share again the market analysis that was conducted by David Drown and Associates, looking at the pay of our positions in the city and how those compare to benchmark communities similar in size and nature to East Grand Forks within the state of Minnesota. So in the packet, I did share the benchmarks or the market analysis with you. I don't plan to go through or present anything on that, but it's available there for questions and happy to try to answer any that any may have. And then as it specifically relates to the budget impact, we've talked about that last week, and of course that's the next agenda item, but that current total payout we would need, the specific dollar amount we would need for the continuation of the retention bonus is $36,500. The extra that I had in that $42,500 is the kind of just what we would plan for the recruitment and relocation bonus if we had any additional new hires in the next year. So that's kind of where I came up with that total number. But if we're talking specifically about the retention bonus, that's $36,500. It would be the July 2024 payment that we would need to be responsible for.
Anybody have any questions for Reid? I think one of the things that, we're bringing this back, we said it was going to be for a year and we wanted to bring it back now and have a discussion on it. I think, looking at it, I know we've asked the question, can we tell if it's worked or not? I think, we've had, right now we're fully staffed because the SRO's back on patrol. And once he goes back, and when he goes back, we'll be down 1 officer. So we'll have to be looking at next year for another officer. I think, going another year with this would be my wish. I know we can have discussion to tie it. I know they've asked to tie it to the contract if we go 2 or 3 years. But I think we can, my wish would be that we move this forward and do it again for next year. That's what I'm thinking. So, anybody else have anything?
I agree.
Mr. Larson.
Yeah, I would agree as well. We've been fortunate enough to have a number of new officers ceremonies here in the last year after we did this program. And I don't know if it's a direct correlation, but it certainly has helped. And it seems like we've got great momentum there. And to stop this now, I think would not send the right message to our police force. So I hope we continue this for another year. That wouldn't necessarily connect it to their union contract.
It's an MOU. So,
okay. I like that it rides separate for future councils to make decisions on their own, but I would support it for another year. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
We're talking about what's fair and equitable, and we were talking about sidewalks being fair and equitable, right? So how do you move snow from one sidewalk and not another, and how do you create a fairness? Well, how about recruitment and retention bonuses for our whole city staff, right? For all 90 plus or minus of the people we have on our city staff. And again, my mind goes back to the summer of George Floyd and the summer of Cody Holte and the summer of police officers being insulted and spit upon and thrown bricks at. And this, let's not forget that moment that we were in and how this all happened, that record numbers of early retirements of police officers and record shortfalls of people coming into the profession, and our way of saying we appreciate you and we're going to put some dollars behind it to show it. So let's hold that memory, because that's how we're doing this. That's why we're doing this with that group of our people, is because of what they went through during that time and the message we want to send to them. We're also, of course, saying every single member of our city, every single staff member we have, every department head, we appreciate every single one of you. But this was a unique time in American history and a unique time in our community's history, and this was an important message to send. So if we're looking at fairness across all constituencies inside of City Hall, that's where this one comes in.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Repeal.
I'd also like to see a little accountability on the officers too, as to their behavior, etc. Throughout the year. Some shouldn't qualify because maybe they didn't act appropriate at certain times. They were written up or something. I think we have to take that into consideration too. It's a bonus. It's there to entice them. But it shouldn't, like we said, it's never going to be part of their wages. And we got to make it quite clear in the MOU that it's not part of their wage. We can take it away tomorrow if we want to. Just a thought.
Anybody else have anything good with the order on that? So we'll move it on to next week and go from there. All right, thank you so much. Now move on to discussion on 2024 budget. Mr. Hutton and Ms. Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. In the packet, Ms. Anderson provided an updated kind of summary sheet that differed a little from our discussion last Tuesday with some of the moving parts of the budget and some of the items that we discussed at last Tuesday's presentation that could be found for additional savings or additional revenues. So I did pass out tonight an update to that shows a little bit of the comparison of where we were a week ago Tuesday at showing a deficit, and then what looked different in the packet that Karla had. So we started out, the summary Karla showed last week showed $409,950 is the deficit, and then I walked through some of those other considerations that are still out there. The packet that was included in the summary that was included in the packet this week showed a deficit of $440,285, and the items changed in that is we did include the $150,000 that's kind of an assumption of some additional liability that may be out there with ongoing negotiations for wages. And then we removed the police patrol SUV that we talked about. There is an investigations SUV in the budget for next year. That remains still in the budget to be purchased, but Karla had it accounted for in the general fund, and Chief Headland and I had discussed using some seizure funds that have their own specific account now that can be used for the purpose of buying investigative vehicles. So that would be the plan for how we would purchase that investigations SUV next year. The $8,500 we talked about for the increase in permit fees, and then there was just a few miscellaneous changes as we're working on the salaries document that we have with ongoing negotiations and a couple groups that we have tentative agreements on. There's a lot of moving parts still to that document with different anniversary dates and different changes, so there's a minimal fee change there, and that will continue to evolve even in the next few weeks as we hopefully wrap up some of the other contracts that we have outstanding. And then going through the bottom half of this handout that I gave, it goes through some of those miscellaneous items that are still out there that could be considered for budget savings. We talked about the SRO position last week, and I think at an upcoming work session with the council, we'll hopefully have more discussion on that. But we've had some good discussion with the police force and with the school district and trying to find ways locally to be able to get the SRO back into the school to some degree. And that would allow some revenue to come back in that category. And then the other ones listed, the public works position I touched on last week, that's ongoing, and we would hope in the next couple of weeks to be able to discuss that at a council level. A few items, just I think that were out and were commented on last week for questions that I think maybe I wouldn't mind if there was any direction from the council or any next steps the city staff should take to propose. We talked about public safety aid. Mr. Larson, you asked we get that to a 0. The police chief and fire chief are refining those budget numbers they have, and I think we have a couple $1,000s in each of those line items as pads for any inflationary or factors, but they're refining those numbers, so hopefully we'll be able to accomplish that by the end of the year. The Senior Citizen Center is one that I think, whether that's tonight or at a future meeting, I think needs more discussion from the city council. The raising the idea again of selling the building, is that something that we really as a group are looking to consider? And if so, what steps do we need to consider to do that, i.e. an appraisal, any of those types of things? In a discussion I had with one council member last week after the meeting, we talked about this HVAC unit that's in the budget at $120,000. Mr. King, I think, would be prepared to talk about that some too if there's a question on it. But that's one that, number one, I think there's probably an opportunity if we're committed to the senior center long term to fundraise for a project like that. To ask that group of people to go back to the table and start locally working at some level of fundraising, if it's a city match of some degree, or it's they think they can tackle the entire project. I think there's opportunity there. And the timetable for that, I think, could be up for discussion too on when that needs to be done. The building is heated, the building is cooled. It is just simply that it is not as efficient or up to code as we'd like it to be operating a commercial kitchen with the meal service program that goes on there. And then finally, it was offered last week on that discussion of a reorganization of how we use the senior center and what that looks like. And again, whether that's a discussion for tonight or if we would like to see a specific item at a future meeting, I'd like some direction on that, on maybe who needs to be involved or how we tackle that discussion. If it's not sell the senior center and it's reorganize what it looks like, where do we begin with tackling that concept? And then the last one was water and light fees. Mr. Minkelseth is here. We did have a discussion about the franchise fee that was talked about at the meeting last week. The preference of water and light certainly would be at this point, with their budget already set, would be that we wouldn't touch the franchise fee for 2024. And then the other piece was the building maintenance fee, and the answer is similar there, in that they would hope that we'd be able to leave it as is for 2024, but was I think more open-minded to having that discussion about what that could look like in 2025 and beyond, to have a correlation to these increases in costs we've seen with building maintenance. So those are some of the outstanding questions and items we had, and certainly opened any direction from anyone.
Anybody have any comments? Larson?
Yeah, I would look forward to some continuing conversation about the senior center. I'd be interested to learn more about the sale of the building, but the timeline there seems like a real challenge as far as the budget for 2024. Not that we should take our foot off the gas pedal there, but I think a focused conversation on staffing levels and responsibilities would be in our best interest, and try and find some efficiencies there, and then that'll really understand, what is the ROI on investing in that HVAC unit. Does it need to be a standard HVAC unit, or does it need to support a commercial kitchen? I really think that there's a good conversation to be had there in relation to the budget for next year.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor?
I had a similar thought about the senior center, and finding a way perhaps to find some savings. Maybe the savings could be found in operations, whatever that looks like. And I think we should be looking at that very, very closely. We can probably get some of that done. I know some volunteer work already is done over there, and that can be looked at. And then I know we have other groups that can help with some programming just to augment that. Maybe we do bring someone in from the library to run a little part of a program in there for our seniors. I'm sure they would love that. They are, lifelong learners and want to be part of continuing to learn and expand. And the library folks are really good at that, and they could bring that in there. So I'm sure we have some options there on programming. And I love your thought of, is there a more efficient, from a cost standpoint, of putting it in HVAC system that could be looked at and still satisfy Nancy and her code requirements. And then the last thing I wanted to say that you touched on, Keith, I'm glad you're here. I love the spirit of cooperation that we have with Water and Light. I think you can tell, even in this moment that we're not going to try to hit the 2024 budget of Water and Light to try to make some changes. I loved your comment to Reid that, we'll have to take a look at that for 2025, but if we could kind of leave 2024 alone, it would be a good thing. And that's the spirit that we look for. I mean, we're going to try to come back to you and say, great, you're pretty well set for 24. We're going to leave that alone, and yet we have now a whole year to get it set for 25. So thank you for that.
Mr. Ben.
Mr. Ben, thank you, Mr. President. So if we raise franchise fees for Water and Light, that just adds a dollar amount to everybody's Water and Light bill, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So the fee is not revenue that's specific, it's coming off the revenue specifically on your charge, on your Water and Light bill. There, the franchise fee would go up, and that amount would come through Water and Light to us.
Okay.
So it's not part of the 5% rate increase, it would just be a franchise rate increase. They'd collect it and give it to us, just like another tax, just to explain it to you.
Sure. Aren't we taxing the poor?
And the rich, and everybody in between.
Right.
It's a uniform
It's a user
tax.
fee. It's a user fee is what it comes down to.
It's disproportionately taxing poor individuals in this town. It shifts the funds, right? Because if it's a $10 fee for everybody, right? I might be able to afford a $10 fee, but someone else might need that $10 to do something else. So I would rather raise property taxes than just shift money around through a franchise fee. That's my opinion.
The franchise fee is the number of kilowatts you use.
Usage.
Based on your
Right,
usage.
but
No,
it's-
just so that everybody knows it's built on usage. It's not a set monthly fee like some of the other fees we have.
Sure.
It's on usage.
And I want to make it clear too that as we consider this, nobody's looking to double, triple some franchise fee. We're just looking for it to go at about the rate of inflation so that it does what it's supposed to do. The way that it did it 1 year, 5 years ago, it is positioned to continue to do that and not do it at a smaller and smaller and smaller ratio going forward. It just has to ride with inflation. We're not looking to do some radical hike on this thing.
Sure. An argument that I would make is a wealthy individual can afford a more efficient heating unit. Well, when I was starting out in my adult life, the house that I lived in, the mortgage was low. My heating bill was more than what I paid for the mortgage.
But I will say a smaller space, when we moved from our home on 20th Street to where we are now, to heat a smaller space was about half the cost. So there's a lot of savings to that starter home. If you do button up the insulation, the windows, you can, and we have some stuff probably through Water and Light also for, making sure your home is energy efficient. A smaller home can be very affordable to heat and cool.
Yeah, I get that. I would just prefer raising property taxes versus raising a franchise fee. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else have anything on that?
Is anybody interested in what the rate is at this time? So in 2010, the rate was .0075. In 2016, we went to .0085. If we went to .0095, it would be about $155,000 that we'd collect, just so you're aware of that, for 2025 or whatever.
Anybody else have anything? I think, Mr. Larson and the mayor hit the points that I was thinking too, that the more discussion about senior center, not just discussion on selling the building, but different discussions on, organizational wise and how it's been run or how we go forward and do everything there. And I think also there's probably some discussion I think that, we need to continually have. I know we have Truth and Taxation next week, which is at 6 o'clock. It's not 5, so everybody remember that. But still, it's not going to be set then. We still have time after that meeting to set the budget. We just have to do it by the 19th, it's our last meeting. So December 19th is our last meeting of the year, so. But, anybody else have anything? See none? Remember, 6 o'clock, Tuesday, next week. Did I get it right, Megan? Is that everything? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Larson. Second by Riepel. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion is carried, means adjourned. Ron, did you